It started, in fact, this concept in 1967. It was, in fact, initiated by a very important report, which is called the Sharpe report, which is a report prepared on request of the President Johnson at that time in US. And Mr. Sharpe was the leader of the commission. And what he said, basically, he said, innovation is not research. Secondly, innovation is coming very often from small enterprise. And thirdly, what is fundamental is fighting against innovation, against obstacles to innovation. And one of the key things of the government is to fight against those obstacles. And that was a really important message which came out from the Sharpe report. And the consequence is that it made, in fact, innovation policy distinguished from science and research policy. And it changed the viewpoint that innovation was flowing directly from research and as a kind of natural mechanistic process. And we have been then developing this concept of innovation policy over 30, 40 years. And the first study, which was really dealing with innovation policy, was at OECD in '73. And there was a big surveys all around the world to understand what is about innovation policy in the viewpoint of governments. And out of the 24 governments of OECD at that time, we discovered there was a lot of different conceptions about what they feel about innovation policy. And it has been a long march to gradually understand what is in it. And we arrived to conceptualize this, I would say about 10 years ago, in saying the question is fundamentally for the government to act as a gardener of the innovation process. A gardener because you have to take care of basically three things. First, you have to approach innovation like a plant, a flower which has to grow. And so if you want the flower to grow, you have to prepare the soil. Prepare the soil is making a good knowledge base and dealing with the basic education, the technical education, the tertiary education, and prepare the mind for that. You have to develop the knowledge, which is research, and to build a good research base, which is able to interact with the economy and society. That's one thing. The second point is to support appropriately the innovation project and innovators. And what matters fundamentally is to provide them adequate package of support, which is not only finance, but also technical, commercial support, and so on. And notably, what is quite fundamental is to organize some form of Thank you very much. So I will try to manage then and come back to the right presentation. Okay, thank you very much. So the second thing for the innovators, for supporting innovators is to provide the necessary package. And one important point is precisely this interface structure that we spoke about. Because the question of innovators is that he is operating among different people, scientists, business people, and so on, and he has to be, in fact, a kind of catalyzers. And you need to have a kind of support structure which facilitates the communication. And the third point is to have a third function of the gardener after preparing the ground, after watering the plant, is to eliminate the weeds and all the herbs which prevent the growth of the plant. And that is fighting against obstacles to innovation, which are in fact monopolistic attitude, which are regulatory systems which are blocking innovation, which are all sorts of behavior which prevent the success of innovation. So you see, then you are touching a number of policies. Those policies are research, but also education, industry, commerce, trade, justice, if you need good cards for precisely defending the innovators against predators and so on. And then you discover that innovation policy becomes something in the middle of a number of government departments. And it's totally different from the traditional views, which was just to put innovation at as a kind of follow-up of the research policy. And that approach of innovation policy in the middle of a constellation of government departments has been adopted by the most powerful countries in terms of innovation. Notably, you have a good example, which is Finland. Finland built up, at the end of the 90s, a very powerful committee, which was called at that time the Science Technology Policy Committee, as made of all the key ministers, including the Minister of Finance, led by the Prime Minister, with top-level representatives from the civil society, the business community, the trade unions, and so on. And this committee was meeting twice a month for taking the key decisions regarding budget allocations, regarding creation of new structure, reorientation of existing bodies, and so on. And that has been essential for promoting the capacity of innovation in Finland. So you see that we have evolved in 40 years from a very different viewpoint about what is innovation policy. And if you come back to a broader understanding, you understand that beyond the notion of innovation system, which was very much promoted as let's say, the kind of system by which you have institutions which are interacting on each other to create innovation like research, enterprise, public laboratories, and markets and so on. Beyond that, you have what we can call a development system. A development system is precisely this series of departments and policy areas, including education, trade, justice, and so on, which create the dynamics of a country, which is a broader system than just the innovation system. But beyond the organization of these different departments and these different policy fields, you understand also that there is the organization of society. And the organization of society is what you can see, what makes an education system shape in a certain manner, what makes an industry shape in a certain manner, which is different from one country to another, and what makes, for instance, a broader society functioning more or less with, let's say, good justice, corruption practice, or whatever. Then you discover beyond this development system what we can call a societal system. So you see the innovation capability of a country becomes dependent on, in fact, three embodied systems like Russian puppets, innovation system, which is embodied in the development system, which is itself embodied into a societal system. And the problem of the developing countries is precisely that the societal system is not fit for creating a climate which is favorable, conducive to innovation. So we are now back to the presentation.